My dear students, today we will see the fourth lecture of advancement in leadership styles, that is ethical leadership. Ethical leadership. Students, you have seen the authentic leadership, you have seen the servant leadership, you have seen the transformational leadership. But what is the need of ethical leadership, which is based on purely ethical values? Now, business and ethics. Business is possible through ethics as far as long-term sustainability is concerned. Ethical leadership means that you are nurturing, motivating the people with some basic principles, some ethical consideration, which is now most important, students. Ethical behavior of leader, you can say, is it possible? Every time ethics, ethics, ethics. Do you confirm that with ethics, business organization can run very smoothly? With ethics, without ethics? Now it is much debatable context. Ethical leadership says follow some basic core principles to manage your organization, to motivate your employees, nurturing your employees. So many things you will be learning out of this text. What way ethical leadership has been transformed? What are the key considerations of ethical leadership? Core functions of ethical leaders, outcome of ethical leadership, and ethical leadership versus other leadership. Examples of ethical leaders, benefits and challenges of ethical leadership. That means we are keeping in mind that UG, PG and the research scholar in different branch of study. Either you are from commerce, management, psychology, whatever is your branch, that will help everybody. Start, what is the ethical leadership? Ethical leadership refers to leading by example in a manner that reflects value such as honesty, integrity, fairness and consideration for others. It emphasizes building trust, respecting others and making decisions that align with moral and ethical principles. That means whatever things you need to apply in organizations, whatever policy you are supposed to apply, plan, keeping in mind ethical consideration. Definition given by Malik and others, 2023, Babel 2012. See in the slides, ethical leaders are charismatic roles model who hold top position in organizations and may attract subordinates with their personality. Leaders adapt their behavior towards subordinates depending on their view of them in a direct relationship. It might be claimed that followers who believe their leaders to be ethical benefit from excellent social exchange outcomes. This very important definition given by Malik et al. 2023. One more definitions by Babel 2012 define ethical leadership as the process of influencing people by values, principles, beliefs that closely align with established standard in corporate conduct. These concepts delineate the fundamental aspect of ethical leadership. It's very important part by definitions given by Malik and others and also Babel. What exactly that institutional conduct, institutional culture, business practice, it must be aligned with ethical values and leader must confirm all kind of things. So This is the basic meanings of ethical leadership. Now, development of ethical leadership is very important. Ethical leadership is response to evolve challenge in leadership research shaped by globalization, shifting organizational objectives. The concept of ethical leadership evolved from traditional leadership model, emphasizing values-based leadership as a critical factor in organizational effectiveness. McCain and Hall 2009 highlighted the importance of defining a good leader, emphasizing ethical values as fundamental to leadership success. Leader globalization played a crucial role in shaping ethical leader as reflected in the 4B model, which links organizational ethics to employee engagement and satisfaction. Now see the 4B model of ethical leadership. The first one is the values, the core ethical values, beliefs, principles that guide to leader decision and action. Values. Vision, this leader's ability to align values with a clear ethical purpose for the organization, and virtue, consistently demonstrating moral character and integrity in leadership practices. The expression of ethical beliefs through communication and behavior, inspiring others. Now 4B, values, vision, virtue and voice. These are the core issues of ethical leadership. Now see, when we fix some objectives, consider the values and you just align your vision, keeping in mind the values of the organization. Virtue is very important part. Try to develop and nurture that group of things which create some attributes for the organization. Then voice, values must reflect through your voice. There is the 4B model, which is the core basis of ethical leadership. Characteristics of ethical leadership, these are all some of, some moral context, but one has to be very clear. Brown and Tribino 2006 highlighted following key characteristics of an ethical leader. Integrity, consistently upholding moral values and principles. Consistently upholding moral values and principles. And this is very important part. Integrity means consistently upholding moral values. You just use it consistently, frequently. Honesty, being transparent and truthful in all dealings. Fairness, treatment all employees equitable without bias. Accountability, taking responsibility for ethical and unethical action. I think it's just an imaginary leader. Fostering, identifying ethical norms. Now see, here is some of points like the fairness, honesty, justice, accountability. It is some of qualitative phenomena which perhaps more typical to measure. It's not so easy to understand that what way ethical leader performs. Now, in organization, if you see in the different field of management and leadership, you can find so many leadership practices and using the different types of styles. But ethical consideration which can be aligned with your dharma, your spirituality and your culture. So this aspect is more important. We can align with this thing, our epics of different religion. Students, ethical leadership, if I see it is imaginary, it's not possible. But thing is that without ethical behavior, ethical relationship, ethical leadership, sustainability is not possible. Your organizations may not be sustainable for longer period without 4B. Now see what is very important: role modeling, moral courage, altruism. These are also the some basics of ethical leadership: role modeling, ethical conduct, moral courage, ethical principles, altruism is very important, helping others, doing some kind of extra role, perhaps need of the hour. Being a leader of corporate segment, one can verify, one can understand, one can assess what kind of ethical practices being followed by a particular leader. Now, core functions of ethical leaders. This is very important: shaping value paradigms. What is it exactly? Shaping value paradigms means what would be the framework of values that can influence others. You just define it, and it is possible if you have the ethical leadership. Bridging the ethics action gap is very important part. What your ethics and what kind of actions you have, and you can identify the gap. Building trust and ethical influence. See, trust is one of the positive influence of leader, and ethical influence, some people believe you that because of you are adopting ethical behavior. Now see, managing ethical dilemmas strategically. Sometimes you are not knowing basically is it ethic or non-ethics, is it ethics or some other issues. But which is very important to know exactly, ethical dilemma is very common, means consequences and weigh competing factors in decision making. They create structures to prevent ethical issues, reduce situational pressure and minimize bias. Once you are ethical, following the ethical behavior, that you can minimize your bias and you can reduce the structural pressures, fostering learning and ethical culture. Now see, this is very important part. Employees learn ethical behavior by observing their leaders. Ethical leadership contributes to sustainable financial growth, respect within the workplace, incorporating the spiritual perspective. I think through ethical behavior, you can connect with the nature. Ethics is such a construct, academic construct, which believe in spirituality, which can direct with the nature, reality, and they are behaving naturally. There is no any kind of fictitious behavior. Continuous ethical assessment is very important point. I think nowadays it's ethical audit is there basically, different organizations they are conducting this kind of things. What kind of ethical code of conduct are there basically, what way we are following and what kind of gap you can see. Outcome of ethical leadership, and I think several points are there: employee behavior, attitude, you can find some kind of changes in the mind of the people, reduce workplace misconduct and unethical issues, organizational performance. Of course, you can improve the ethical climate, you can improve organizational commitment, workplace culture, you can develop the workplace culture, reduce workplace incivility, conflicts, enhance cooperation, teamwork. So these are all some of outcomes, and that is very common. If the ethical leadership is there will be the positive outcome. But thing is that up to what extent, what norms you are adopting in organization, is it exactly we are following? You don't feel some kind of gaps are there? Now see, ethical leadership and other leadership style, that is one kind of difference you might be knowing. Ethical leadership focus on morality, ethical consideration, strongly ethical foundation, integrity, honesty, accountability, increased trust and other. Transformation leadership, vision, motivation and innovation, and may overlook ethics. Transformation leadership, because they want to transform, they don't believe all the time ethics like that. Key traits, transformation leadership like as a charisma, inspiration, intellectual stimulation, impact on employees, high motivation, put potential, Authentic leadership, self-awareness, ethical consideration, strong ethical grounding. They are also following the ethical practices, transparency, self-regulation, consistency, high trust, stronger relationship, servant leadership, employees well-being, empowerment, servant leadership, focus on employee well-being, empowerment, ethical consideration, strong ethical focus, prioritizing employees, key traits, empathy, stewardship, listening, and impact on employees, high employee satisfaction, organizational citizenship behavior. Now see, ethics is common except transformation leadership. Almost all cases we are following the ethics, and you can say in modern organizational leadership style, ethics is very common, but all are not following the all parts of the ethics. Some leadership, they are following the specific parts of ethics. That ultimate impact on employees you have seen, it is almost that positive impact, like as workplace culture, ethical blind spots, and high employee satisfaction, and organizational citizenship behavior. We have the numerous example, students, and Murthy is the great examples of ethical leaders. He is prioritizing transparency, integrity, fairness in business practices. You may be debatable, you may debate me basically. In my opinion, they are very ethical leader. You can find some of good qualities of ethical leadership. Ratan Tata is also one of the great example of integrity, sustainability and trust. Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Meta, formerly Facebook, I think worked on enhancing user privacy, promoting digital inclusions and funding initiatives. These are all some of example of ethical leadership. Benefits of ethical leadership: better communication, strong team management, positive workplace culture, employee performance and well-being, organizational reputation and success. These are all very common. Almost all kind of leadership, you can find the almost common benefits like a satisfaction, commitment, well-being, reputation. This is very common, almost all of cases. This is not big thing here. Now see, challenge faced by ethical leadership. This is very important. Now see, ethical dilemmas are there basically, business objective and ethical consideration. There is great dichotomy, and what way this to be balanced properly. This is also one of the challenges. Organizational pressure is one of the main context, like as ethical integrity and organizational success, organizational performance. What level of ethics are required, and also you are demanding organizational performance. This is also one of the main debatable issue. Consistency in ethics. Now see, long-term consistency, that means could you find that one leader continuously he is following the ethical behavior? It is also one of the big issue. And if I see that different types of leader and they have some sort of violation of ethical context, but majority of the leader, they are well defined as far as ethical consideration is concerned. Cultural difference is very important part to adoption of ethical practices, because different culture, people believe in different way, and that particular cases, practicing ethical leadership may be one of the challenge. Now see some of questions basically what I raised for you people as I discussed the different slides. Students, what are the key individual characteristics of an ethical leader? You must be knowing exactly what are the individual characteristics of ethical leader. It's very common, it's very genuine: honesty, integrity, and understanding the followers' problem and navigating the issues. Name the major outcome of ethical leadership in an organizations. Could you imagine through ethical leadership, and in particular business environment, whereas environment is very typical unambiguous and that is so-called turbulent. So, that particular cases how you can apply this particular mechanism. Why ethical leadership important in decision making? This is very important. I think, do you feel that ethical leaders are the more good decision maker? This is also one of the great questions. By being a good decision maker, you need to apply the ethical behavior. It's very common, but some cases it's not possible to be a highly ethical leadership. They can be a good decision maker. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes you can make some kind of relationship among the ethical leadership and the decision making. So, these are all some of questions you can answer it very thoroughly once you see the slides very systematically. Now, see some of reference, some of books you can follow basically for your study. As I told in last lecture also, dear students, if you are EG students, see the text. If you are PG and researcher, then you can see the reference books or some newspaper and some of research articles that will help you basically to understand the whole practices. Now, one of the books like as this one concept of ethical leadership, that is very available online, you know, Ankinola P 2025, very recently you can, and it is very much available in the ResearchGate and some other social site. You can download it, you can see, that will be very useful for your purpose. Brown and Tribino 2006 ethical leadership and review and future direction, also some of journals article you can see. By and large, good number of reference and journals and some books are given basically, you can follow all kind of things. So, dear students, so ethical leadership is one of the most important and very valuable insight to be a good leader, and that will help you basically to nurture this kind of things in organizational setting. So, thank you very much for listening on the lecture of ethical leadership.